Adapa gave names to all concepts in the earth, and Adam gave a name to every living creature, Genesis 2:19. Both Adapa and Adam are in the chain of ancestry to the Assyrians. Semitic Assyrian kings were well aware that Adapa was someone noteworthy. Sargon II, who reigned from 722 to 705 BC, likened him to a king with the likeness of the sage. Sennacherib, who was king of Assyria from 705 to 681 BC, said Ea gave Adapa vast intelligence. Sennacherib compared his own accomplishments in conceiving the ground plan of his palace and city with that of Adapa, who received his wisdom from his father, the wise Ea. King Ashurbanipal referred to Adapa, the sage. He recalled a dream where Ashur, who founded Assyria and had achieved God status in the eyes of the Assyrians, spoke to him, saying, "O king, lord of kings, offspring of the sage and Adapa, you surpass in knowledge even the Apsu and all the wise men."
Although King Ashurbanipal may have been bragging a bit, nevertheless, he traced his ancestry through his grandfather back to Ashur and to Adapa. This puts Adapa in the chain of descent of the Assyrians, even at the apex, as Adapa, according to legend, had no earthly father.
Cyrus of Persia established his reign from 559 to 530 BC. About the same time, Nabonidus was king of Babylon. His line of descent ran through Nabopolassar, who was the father of Nebuchadnezzar in 2 Kings 24 to 26. Nabonidus too recalled the legendary Adapa. Lamenting on an idol he had fashioned, he added, "Not even the learned Adapa knows his name." Later in the same text, the Babylonian king told of a wisdom he possessed that greatly surpassed one which Adapa had composed.
No other man so far back in ancient history had been given such accolades, and by kings no less, who couldn't possibly have known him except by reputation and through lines of ancestry.
Translation of archaic names and places from Akkadian to English has inherent difficulties. Writing in 1906, Archibald Sayce argued the name Adapa should have been translated Adamu on the strength of the character Pa, which had the value of Mu. A principle that governed the transcription of names and words was a selection of characters to express their sounds, which also harmonized with their sense. The last syllable of a name like Adamu was represented by an ideograph, which not only had the phonetic value of Mu, but also signified man, Sayce recommended. Henceforward, therefore, we must transcribe the first name of the man of Babylonian tradition, not Adapa, but Adamu. Charles Horn, who published The Legend of Adapa in 1917, also included in a footnote Adapa, or perhaps Adamu. Reflecting for a moment on ancient naming patterns, often the name of an important ancestor was carried to subsequent generations. The second king on the Assyrian king list was called Adamu, after his far more famous namesake. In tablets recovered at Tello, Adamu is recorded among the proper names. Just as an Assyrian king was named Adamu, and the name cropped up often in Akkadian texts from the reign of Sargon the Great. Adamu was found in records discovered at the Canaanite city of Ebla. One of the governors under Agris-Halam, first Eblaite king, was Adamu. A vassal treaty of Esarhaddon, son of Sennacherib, carried a seal naming Ashur, founder of Assyria, Genesis 10:11, as a god, and appropriately, Esarhaddon named his son, who was crown prince at the time, Ashurbanipal, in honor of him. Thus it should come as no surprise that Adamu appeared among the recorded names within Semite nations which were traceable directly to Noah's sons. In honoring their famous forefather, those tribes preserved the name for many generations, enabling us to identify this important family relationship. By contrast, the name Adamu cannot be found among those nations not related, the Sumerians, Egyptian, Persians, etc. One step further, when Akkadian words are carried into Hebrew, the nominative U at the end is dropped. Thus, Akkadian for Elu, for God, becomes El in Hebrew, meaning God. And in dropping the U in Akkadian Adamu, becomes the Hebrew Adam.
We think there is enough compelling evidence to cause us to believe that the author of Genesis and the original composer of the Adapa Legend had in mind the same man.
In the case of the biblical author, he likely felt compelled to tell his audience what was deemed important or relevant. Even the historian Josephus didn't tell us everything he knew, but I believe we can infer that there was a body of material that was commonly known upon which the composer of the Adapa legend could draw. There were certain facts that were incorporated. Adapa, dare I say Adam, was a priest living in Eridu. He had a special relationship with his God. He was a baker and a fisherman. Something was known about his opportunity for eternal life, and he was important enough that a legend about him would be marketable. An intelligent, creative scribe with a good story could sell copies. Yet I believe the author of Genesis had a higher purpose.
We know that by the time of Abraham, there was only one God. Why so many gods in Mesopotamia?
With clear skies at night, the Sumerians took to stargazing and noted that 7 wanderers behaved differently. Today we know planets orbit around the sun, but they thought gods were moving them around, and there arose a belief in heavenly gods and lesser gods that governed many things that could not be otherwise explained. Gradually, a pantheon of over 3,000 gods arose. The Akkadians originally believed in a triad, Elu or Anu, Ea, and Enlil. As these two cultures were in constant contact, the more culturally advanced Sumerians welcomed their Akkadian neighbors to the 4th and 3rd millenniums BC. Besides learning how to write, they also adopted much of the Sumerian culture, including their gods. Sumerian gods such as Utu, the sun god, and Inanna, the goddess of the planet Venus, were known to the Akkadians as Shamash and Ishtar, for example. The Akkadians became polytheistic up to the Great Flood, which likely was one of the reasons for the flood, but a plurality of gods was always a problem for them, and also to the succeeding Israelites as they continued to rub shoulders with their other nations. In the next episode, we will look at the travels of Adam's sons. I want to thank Ken Miller for joining me, and thank you for watching. And I look forward to our next meeting.